Hello everyone! I want you to imagine a world where getting just one book could take many years. It sounds strange, doesn't it? Well, that was the reality before one amazing invention changed everything. In our explainer today, we are going to learn about the printing press, its creator, Johannes Gutenberg, and the revolution that he started.
So, let's understand what the world was like before this big change. Before the printing press, every single book was a unique object, made entirely by hand. In workshops, just like this one you see here, there were skilled writers called scribes. Their job was to copy each book very carefully, letter by letter. As you can imagine, this made books very expensive, and the whole process was incredibly slow.
Because it took so much time to make even one copy, books were very rare and precious. Just think about that for a moment. Imagine waiting for years just to have one book of your own. This was the big problem, the bottleneck that was slowing down the spread of knowledge all over the world.
But then, one man came along with a brilliant idea that would solve this problem. So let's meet the inventor himself, Johannes Gutenberg. This is Johannes Gutenberg, an inventor from Germany. Now, Gutenberg was not just any inventor, he was the son of a merchant, and he had a very unique combination of skills that made him the perfect person to solve this challenge of making many books quickly. You see, his entire background was the perfect training for what he was about to create. Growing up, he had seen how wine and olive presses worked. He also became a master goldsmith and was very skilled at polishing stones. And most importantly, he knew how to create molds out of lead to make small metal trinkets. Each of these skills, as we will see, became a crucial piece of his revolutionary invention. So, how did all these skills come together? Let's take a closer look at his invention. We will break it down step by step to understand exactly how the first printing press worked.
Gutenberg's main idea was something called movable type. Here's how it worked, in simple steps. First, he used his metalworking skills to create individual metal blocks for each letter of the alphabet. These were called types. Second, these metal letters could be arranged and rearranged to form any word or any sentence. Third, all these letters were locked into a frame and ink was applied on them. And finally, a sheet of paper was pressed onto the frame using a large screw press. The real genius here was that these metal letters could be used again and again for different pages and different books.
And here is the machine itself. Do you remember those olive presses from his childhood? He used that same idea for his printing press. The long handle was used to turn a large screw. This screw pushed down a flat board, called the platen, onto the paper with a lot of pressure. For its time, this machine was very efficient. It could print about 250 sheets on one side in just 1 hour.
Now, let's look at the very first major book that was printed with this amazing new technology. It was a very big project and it took 3 whole years to complete.
The first major book that Gutenberg printed was the Bible. But here is a very interesting fact. These first printed books were designed to look exactly like the beautiful, handwritten books that people were used to. And there was a very clever reason for this.
You see, to make people trust this new technology, the books had to look familiar. Gutenberg printed about 180 copies of the Bible. The metal letters were designed to look like the elegant handwritten styles of that time. The borders of the pages were even illustrated and painted by artists, by hand. And blank spaces were left so that wealthy buyers could add their own custom decorations later.
Now, it is important to note that a type of printing called woodblock printing already existed in Europe before Gutenberg, but his system was much better. With woodblocks, an entire page had to be carved from one block of wood. This was a very slow process, and the wooden block would get worn out. Gutenberg's movable metal type, on the other hand, was far more efficient. Individual letters could be rearranged to make any text. This was faster, the metal was more durable, and it was perfect for European languages which have a small alphabet.
Let's move on and see how this one machine led to a complete transformation across Europe. The impact was so huge that we now call it the printing revolution.
The speed of this change was just amazing. In only 50 years after the printing press was invented, from 1450 to 1500, an estimated 20 million books were printed and sold across Europe. Just think, that's more books than all the scribes in Europe had produced in the previous 1,000 years.
And that was just the beginning. In the next century, the 16th century, that number exploded. It grew 10 times to about 200 million copies. It was a flood of information and new ideas, something the world had never seen before.
This is exactly why we call it a revolution. It was more than just a new machine. It changed society itself. The shift from copying by hand to printing with a machine made books much, much cheaper. Suddenly, more people could afford to buy them, and for the first time in history, a large reading public started to develop.
The technology spread very quickly. Soon, printing presses were set up in most countries in Europe, often by printers who had learned the skill in Germany. Workshops like the one in this picture became common, and making books turned into a huge, large-scale industry.
Now, it's very important to clarify something many people get wrong. Gutenberg did not invent writing or books. Handwritten books, called manuscripts, had existed for centuries. He didn't even invent the basic idea of printing. What he did and what made him so revolutionary was that he perfected the technology with his system of movable metal type. His system made producing books much, much faster and cheaper than ever before.
So, to summarize what we have learned today, Gutenberg's printing press was a real turning point in history. It put more information into the hands of more people faster and more cheaply than ever before.
And this leaves us with a very important question. What happens when so many new books and new ideas can spread so far, so fast? In our next explainer, we will explore exactly that, how the printing revolution completely changed religion, science, and society. Thank you for joining me today.